We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. And I was thinking throughout the week that, it's another light week. Didn't think we had that many emails. And I'm like, it's a pretty full topic list. It's pretty all right. So I think we're back to our regular show this week. And we still filled out nearly 2 hours last week. So there you go. It's just trucking along.
That's us.
That's us.
That's what we do. We're kind of like carp, apparently.
Surprise ourselves.
No matter what we do.
Ah, yes, fill the bowl.
We fill the bowl, and the bowl is 2 hours, and if we don't talk about questions, we just fill it up with Tom complaining about Star Wars.
There is that.
We had somebody over for dinner on Saturday night, and they had listened to the podcast, and the first thing they said is, let's talk about Star Wars, Tom.
Ah, nice.
Because I had a beer in my hand for the first time in 2 weeks. I had a beer in my hand. He was like, you want to talk about Star Wars? I was like, no.
They really did listen. That's nice. That's
listen.
Sweet. Well, you were mentioning didn't really watch a lot this week for yourself.
I started Bullet Train, that one with, what's his name, Brad Pitt. And
that's that one.
I didn't watch that much of it. I don't remember. And then last night we started watching The People We Hate at the Wedding or something like that. It's a Hulu original, which may be on Disney Plus for you. It's got Kristen Bell, and it's like a who's who of actors from some of my favorite TV shows. So there's a couple of people on there from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, a couple of people on there from, or at least one person on there from Ted is there from the Creek show that I won't say the name of. I should probably say at this podcast, as a fair warning to the rest of you guys listening to this, I hope you haven't skipped this because I might curse on this podcast. I'm feeling uppity.
I see. The Canadian show. I'll say it. Yes. It's Schitt's Creek because
that's the one.
SCHI is that one IIT, like the audio company? I can't even remember.
No, ITT. I think it's 2 T's.
Yeah.
SCHITT.
Whatever it is. It's a place. It's a real thing.
Yes. And Ted's in the movie, and I like Kristen Bell from The Good Place, and I like some of the Brooklyn Nine-Nine people. What's her name on the show?
I don't know who you're referring to.
I don't remember. Anyways, there's a couple of people there. So we got about halfway through that movie last night with my wife. I'm just going to say, as much as I like these streaming services trying to come up with their own content, they got to stop making direct for video release movies and trying to convince us that they're going to be good. Netflix just seems to not care. They're like, here's some money, make a movie with it. No oversight, no direction, nothing. It's just
clearly the executives literally don't have time to watch everything that they've greenlit for Netflix, so they're
that's
just
true,
they're
but
not
at the same time you end up with a bunch of crap that's just like, this could have been good. This could have been, but instead it's just a Ryan Reynolds party, or a what's his name, Adam Sandler party, where they're just, them and their friends are making a movie and they're making it up as they go along, and it ends up being kind of, not terrible.
It seems like a pretty good deal on that side of things.
It does, and that's fine, but it does show the importance of having a little bit of oversight and somebody to go, you know what? Instead of it being just what you want to say, maybe we should think about it first, just for a second. So
if nobody's checking and the checks keep coming in the mail, then why put in the effort?
So I got about halfway through that. The People We Hated are at the wedding or something like that, and it's clear to me that this could have been. So far, it's fine. I've enjoyed it fine for a rom-com sort of thing. It's just not funny enough. It's a little bit too angry for what it's supposed to be, and it's not very consistent. Like there's not the characters kind of wobble around in their little story arcs and don't really. You want to see a progression, and instead you kind of see them floundering and just sometimes being terrible, sometimes being okay, and then back and forth and back and forth. That might be more realistic to real life, but we're making a movie here, people.
Yes.
making the movie.
Yeah.
And so,
We want a
what
little
did you
more
watch,
than that.
Rob?
I watched Emily the Criminal. That stars Aubrey Plaza.
Oh, yes.
And yeah.
How was that?
It was okay. It was okay.
Okay. Was it another
bad.
made-for-streaming movie? Because that's
pretty
how I
close.
describe all
Yeah,
of it.
I mean, a very clearly very low budget, and didn't need to be a high budget for what they were telling here. Now, so this is a movie that is like, you better enjoy watching Aubrey Plaza because it completely lives and dies on her because
performance.
all you're doing is watching her. Now, I find her preeminently watchable, so that's why it's okay. You know, as long as she's on screen and being Aubrey Plaza, I'm not going to have any problem, watching the movie. But
She was great in Legion.
Oh yeah, she was fantastic in that. Now
God.
this is
So
not
good.
comedy at all. This is just very. I mean, it's a drama story, and I don't think it played to her strengths. She's a good actress, so like I say, don't mind watching her, but I don't think it played to her strengths. The one sort of like really tense turning point scene, like are they going to do this or are they not going to do this? Is she going to be Emily the criminal or is she going to not be Emily the criminal? The most important pivotal moment of the entire movie. I didn't think her acting was very good in that one scene. And yeah, like, I mean, again, not to criticize her, but like I didn't think that played to her strengths at all. It's
There's a lot of other people that make or break those scenes too, like
there's only one other person in the scene, so
no, that's acting wise, but I'm talking about the cinematographer, the director. There's there's a lot of stuff that goes on as well that can make or break.
And there were a
those
few
scenes.
little things on the cinematography front and that stood out in a negative way because it was kind of like, let's try this shot. And there was no reason for the focus to get racked at that moment, but they just decided to do it. Like, there was a couple little things like that. Again, it's telling of the sort of low budget thing that was going on there. I did want to mention, though, I think a much better version of almost the exactly this same movie in many ways. Like, the plot is not exactly the same and the motivation behind things are not exactly the same, but it's a very, very similar movie with a very, very similar theme, is White Lie. White Lie stars Casey Roll, that you might know from Hannibal in particular, or from The Killing. And so, again, it's a movie about, young woman kind of getting into criminal mischief. Again, different motivations between the two of them, and lives and dies entirely on Casey Roll's performance in White Lie. But I thought it was done in a much more compelling way. So I would put those two movies as very contemporary to one another, very easy to watch together as sort of like a double bill. And my personal feeling was that White Lie was the better version of it. So yeah, I mean, I didn't care for the resolution of Emily the Criminal, but that's just a personal preference type of thing. Given the character that they portrayed, all the characters they portrayed, I was kind of like, I don't really care what happens to you. Like, I don't like. You people make terrible, terrible decisions, and it's like,
right.
That can be a compelling movie, but this is also like, why do I really worry about any of them?
I have problems with the same thing when I watch movies. Like, I don't mind a character that makes questionable decisions or decisions.
Oh, they can be.
There just has to be some sort of motivation or something that I understand as to why they're doing.
Oh,
that.
and it was like, it was all understandable. It was just Emily the Criminal. It was all just kind of like, it was okay. It was okay.
Yeah.
I'm not angry that I watched it, but I'm not going to be like, I saw quite a bit of praise for it. Again, like, I don't know what's going on with movie reviewers these days. I'm seeing a lot of I saw quite a lot of really strong praise and really.
Maybe they got afraid of that movie about eating. Was it called The Menu?
Oh, there was The Menu. Yeah.
The Menu with that movie's apparently I haven't seen it, but it's apparently about the restaurant guy getting back at all the critics of his restaurant by killing them with food or something. I don't really know.
I remember what I wanted to say. This wasn't Aubrey Plaza doing this. This was basically the only other co-star in the movie. I'm almost a little bit reticent to say this because if you are someone who's been watching movies and TV and you've never noticed what I'm about to say, I might just be ruining a lot of performances for you going forward. But Tom will be familiar with this because you took some acting when you were, going to school in that, and I took acting. And there is something that I believe anyone who's been through most normal acting classes would have been taught, which is that to make a scene breathless and tense, you, the actor, should not be breathing heavy. All right? That doesn't make the scene breathless. It just gets annoying. Right? Yeah. And I see so often in so many shows, actors speaking like they're out of breath. And that is not compelling. That, like, I get it. You're thinking, oh, if I'm in this heightened state and things are really tense, I'd be breathing heavy in real life. It doesn't convey very well as an acting technique to just be out of breath all the time. That I find it really annoying when actors do that. And so Aubrey Plaza didn't do that, but her co-star sure did. And it was like, oh, like, just say your lines. And if you want it to be breathless and tense, be still. Don't be breathing heavy. It just, if you want to learn how to do really good tense acting, watch like Ben Kingsley. Right? Because when he wants a show when he wants the audience to be holding their breath and be tense and out of breath, he is the most still. Yeah. He will just stare at someone and not move and not breathe at all, and it makes you feel out of breath as the audience member. It's the complete reverse. So
because you're, especially when they speak soft, when they do that and they speak soft, then you're like leaning forward and trying not to breathe because you don't want to make
and
noise.
And then when he says his line
like
like loudly and quickly, which Ben Kingsley does fantastically. Gary Oldman too, another perfect example of how to do this, right? It's stillness. Stillness creates tensity, not sitting there going, okay, that's not tense. Being all out of breath and breathing heavy. Just bugs me.
It's Lamaze. It's just Lamaze.
All right.
AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask us by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You can go to our website, which of course is avrant.com. Find our episodes, older episodes and current episodes, along with our show notes. That has timestamps in them, as well as a Flickr album that you can follow along with the pictures that we'll be talking about whenever they're available to us. You can contact us directly. Facebook.com/AVRant podcast, YouTube.com/AVRant. You can contact Rob directly, rob@avrant.com. His Hive is at
whenever
First
it comes
Reflect.
back. It should be back this week. They said it would be back this week. They've been offline for like a week and a half.
Whatever.
It's literally two people doing all the coding behind the scenes.
I'm not saying that. I cannot express enough how much I know people. There's some people who are really attached to their Twitter accounts and really attached to that method of social media and communicating with the world and stuff like that. I am not sad to see any social media go away. honestly. I mean, I know that's almost a get off my lawn sort of statement, but
I found
there
Twitter
is something
useful.
to be said with for people just to shut up every once in a while and stop just shouting into the void.
That part, but I found Twitter useful. I did too. Displeased by the way it has all gone, but anyway.
Well, I mean, you're not the target audience of Twitter anymore.
I am definitely
unfortunately.
Definitely not.
There's a target audience, and it is a specific type of person. It's going to be very more specific by the day.
Yes.
So, just saw some news announcements today about changes that had been made at Twitter that I was like, oh, that won't make it any more racist.
Right.
So, yay. Let's see. You can contact me directly, tom@avrant.com, and that's it.
Yeah.
Just actually, it won't work because I won't answer it. But you can go to question@avrant.com to leave your questions. We thank our listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, all you have to do is support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is going to patreon.com/AVRant podcast and sign up to become a monthly subscriber, contributor to our podcast. Every month, I'll take some money from you, a minimum of $1, and give most of it to us. So we have 133 patrons right now, and I thank all of them. So thank you very much to our patrons.
That is right. That's patreon.com/AVRant podcast if you'd like to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation. So big thanks to our 133 patrons over there.
Honestly, it is like everyone I know is complaining that Christmas snuck up on them, and I'm complete agreement. I know that Christmas is not snuck up. That it has been the same place it's always been. But my life in particular, our family's life has been very stressful the last couple of weeks. And we've had lots of little and big dramas going on with specifically our children, because that's what children do. And we turned around and went, oh crap, if we don't order something, we're literally going to have nothing under the tree.
Yeah, I did all of the shopping, and I basically do all the shopping for everyone in the family at this point, because they're just like, yeah, just let Rob order it. It'll be the right thing, and it'll show up. And I've done all that across the last 2 weeks. I'm like, it's good that I did it, because shipping has been slower this year. Multiple things that are supposed to be 2-day shipping have taken a good 8-9 days to actually show up. So,
I ordered a couple of things that are like, it'll probably be there before Christmas. I'm like, well, I hope so. I mean, we've got nothing to put underneath the tree. We don't even have the tree up yet. That's how behind we are over here. Let's say, if you can't support us financially, we understand. Just do something else to support us and let us know, and we will mention you here. So Keshaun sent a Movies Anywhere code for Edge of Tomorrow for me to use. So
that's right.
I already have it on Movies Anywhere. Okay. So, which I got
remember that
from somebody. It's okay, you wouldn't know, because I got it from somebody else, and it didn't come through the podcast. It was just from somebody else. By the way, great movie.
It is good. Very
just
entertaining.
A great movie. Great acting, great everything. I mean, you can have whatever you think of Tom Cruise. Everybody loves him now because of the stupid Maverick movie. But this was great before Maverick came out. So very much like that movie. We also got some notes of gratitude for keeping the podcast going from Nick, Billy, Mike, who says happy holidays. Aras, Travis, he says, is it just him, or has Tom been more ranty lately? Must be the glasses.
Yep.
No, it's the frickin' kids. Okay, don't have them. I'm telling you, it's a mistake you can't unmake. And Steven. So Nick, Billy, Mike, Gurinder, Aras, Travis, Steven, thank you for thanking us.
Yeah, somehow skipped over Gurinder the first time, but it's good you caught him on the second time. So Nick, Billy, Mike, Gurinder, Aras, Travis, Steven, thank you all very much for sending in those notes of gratitude to us. The notes of encouragement are definitely appreciated. Happy holidays to you, Mike, as well. Happy holidays to everybody, in fact, because we certainly are into that season. And there we go. Thank you to everybody for continuing to listen and sending in your questions.
I will say I don't think I've been extra ranty. I think that people just notice it. It comes and goes, and sometimes I get on a high horse, and sometimes I don't. I certainly haven't felt any more ranty than lately. But maybe I am. Who knows? Some people feel that way.
Yep.
In the news over the weekend, in an event that is sure to settle every projector debate. So, in case you were wondering, the projector debate has been settled.
Yep. It's done now.
It's done. It will foster peaceful, universal agreement amongst all home theater fans.
Definitely.
Value Electronics, whoever the heck they are, held their 2022 Projector Shootout and crowned LG the king of ultra short throw projectors and JVC the king of long throw projectors. So let's talk a bit about the event and the results.
There shall be no controversy from this whatsoever from fans of other brands. They'll just all accept that this must be the truth.
This is in no way clickbait. In case you're wondering, this is not a clickbait article. Sure. This is just, it's basically, I mean, it's a non-article. I don't even think anybody's going to click on it because it's so boring. The statement is just, it's self-evident. Everyone knows this. So the event was held at Value Electronics at a location in New York. I don't know where that is. I mean, where New York is, but I don't know where Value Electronics is. The testing area was visually blacked out using curtains, and the walls and floor are all black, but the ceiling and a few support columns were white.
There's the problem, Tom. We found
drama.
The whole thing.
Was everybody who was viewing also wearing black? And
I don't think so. And I can see, in fact, most of the people who were viewing it there had glasses, so there were reflections, Tom.
Reflections, Rob.
There were reflections in this room.
Opening up my LaCroix.
That's right.
4 identical 120-inch 16 by 9 or 16:9, whatever. Seymour screen excellent. Radiant white screens were set up and separated by black dividers so that no light would spill from one screen onto another. AV Pro and Metra AV supplied the HDMI switching and certified ultra high-speed HDMI cables. Great. Mm-hmm. Expert judges scored each projector in 7 main categories: bright content, near black shadow detail, color accuracy, upscaling, uniformity, motion resolution, and detail sharpness. Tone mapping and color volume for HDR content were also scored. The projectors were not fully calibrated, though God help us all. Instead, they were measured to find their most accurate out-of-the-box picture modes and color temperature settings, and they were set to those along with basic user picture settings. The rationale was that most users will experience these projectors this way. That is sure to be met with universal acclaim and acceptance. No one should ever have a problem with that methodology at all.
It's good that they stated it, though, at least.
They did, and I actually agree with it 1,000%. Like, it's exactly the way I think it should be set up, and I've never said anything controversial at all.
Also saved them a boatload of time. That's what it really did. Because it's quite the thing to actually go through and painstakingly calibrate this many projectors. Yeah.
So 5 ultra-short throw models ranging in price from $3,500 to $6,500 were compared on day one. Epson's LS800 was the only LCD model. LG's HU915QB, it's a quarterback one. It's the only model using the larger DLP chip that only gets shifted twice per frame for 4K resolution. The Hisense PX1 Pro, AWOL TV 3500, and Samsung LSP9T all use the smaller DLP chip that gets shifted 4 times per frame. Whatever. I don't know. The LG at 6500 came out on top overall, with the $1,000 less expensive AWOL being noted as for being the brightest.
Yes. However, it has to be noted, because people are going to be all upset about this, the 4-movie $3,000 ultra short throw projector that won the projector shootout, at least within its category amongst its contemporaries, was not included in this. People are up in arms, Tom. They're up in arms because
they not include the one projector that you cared about.
The less expensive one, it might have beaten them all, Tom. Might have beaten them all. Could have happened.
Never know.
Never know now. No other way to compare projectors. This was it. This was the one and only time. The one and only shot. This must be taken as gospel at this point, because that's how these things go. Shootouts.
So day 2 brought the long throw model comparisons. They were divided up by price brackets, with the entry level costing between $4 and $7. The mid-tier
entry level
$1,000.
The entry level
$4 and $7, not $4 and $7.
The entry
$4 and $7,000. That's what entry level. These are the people that you're dealing with here.
This was a 4K projector shootout, so that's where 4K resolution projectors start. Not really, because there are like the $1,500 ones with the 4 times pixel shifting DLPs, but they were talking about, well, it wasn't actually all native 4K, because you did have a pixel shifter in there, but whatever. That was the entry level as far as this went.
4 and 7,000 for the entry level, the mid tier being between 11 and 16,000, the high end being between $25,000 and $30,000. LG's AU810PB was the least expensive at $4,000 and the only DLP model in the whole group. It came in dead last. Was this blind? Was this done blind at all? Like, people didn't know what projector they were looking at?
I don't know, and I don't think so, because they were clearly visible in the rack and the screens were all side by side. So, yeah, I don't think it was blind testing.
Yeah, I find this shocking. JVC did a clean sweep of all the 3 price brackets, with the NP5, NZ8, and NZ9 being declared the winners. Sony's models were not only miles behind. Not miles behind, and one for sheer light output, but nothing could touch JVC's black levels. Epson did get an honorable mention for value, though. Thanks for showing up. Here's your participation trophy. Yeah. Okay. So, a long time ago, I like doing shootout articles because I think they're informative and interesting.
They're
very hard to do.
Yes.
They're very hard to do because
very time consuming.
You never can include everything you want that everybody wants you to include, because it's nigh impossible to do so. Even if you do ask for every single model under the sun and they get everything in there, if you could, someone's going to find something obscure that you've never heard of or was released after the article was all the tests were done, and then say, how come you didn't include this? So there's that. The methodology is never going to be good enough for anybody. They're always going to find some reason why Well, if it's done blind, it shouldn't have been done blind. If it was done blind, it wasn't done blind enough. If it was only single blind, then it had to be double blind. And then there's just all sorts of problems with doing it. I like doing them because I think they're fun and informative. I take a much more lighthearted approach and a more reverent, if you will, approach. Meaning, I start off the article with, "You're going to complain, and I don't care. This is how we did it, and we had fun doing it, and that's the end of it. If you don't like the way we did it, do your own." And that's the way that you kind of have to do these things.
Sure.
Because if you try to go the strict, like, we were as scientific as we possibly could be, and we did all these things,
right,
you're never going to get there because it's not possible. I mean, it is possible.
It is
but
possible,
it's not
but
practical.
not in, like, this is a retailer bringing enthusiasts and industry experts, but largely enthusiasts and a retailer, and doing it across 2 days. And there is no way that you could go through this many projectors in a rigorously scientific method, double blind and all the rest of it, in that amount of time. It would, like, studies like that take like years to conduct, which is obviously too long when we're talking about models that get replaced every year or every 2 or 3 years at the most. So this is not meant to be that. One of the things that always gets me about the shootouts is they pick these categories and they score them. And I mean, the scores are pretty darn arbitrary. Like, I'm showing some of the scorecards that were just from one of the participants who shared them online. But I mean, they're just, they're writing down, a perfect score would be 10. I don't know if these were, like, on the scorecard. This is clearly not an afterwards adjustment thing. So I don't know if they were just told that whichever one of these looks best, give it a 10, because we don't have that in here. On the scorecards, they don't have a 10, in all of the categories. So it hasn't all been adjusted up to that the way it was in the projector screen shootout that was done. There, they adjusted whichever one was best in the category, give it a 10, and then score everything below that. Here, it seems like they were told, no, whatever the criteria were, which that wasn't really stated explicitly in any of the write-ups, how the scoring was to be done. So seems pretty subjective, seems pretty arbitrary as far as giving it, a 9.2 instead of a 9.3. Like, how do you really notice that?
I don't allow people to do that when I do those things, because you're basically going to a 100-point scale at that. Even if you're going to, like, give a half, you might, if you're going to give half and you have a 1 to 10 rating system, just go to 20 because that's what it is. But if you let them give a 0.2, you're now on the 100-point scale, which is ludicrous.
But then it's also what categories do you select? Because, like, one of the categories here was color accuracy, but they didn't calibrate these projectors, and they didn't have a $30,000 reference monitor.
You don't need somebody to look at it and tell you if it's color accurate. We have colorimeters for that.
That is an objective thing that you can say, is it accurate or is it not? And we can say exactly how much they did. It's not a feeling, color accuracy. And also, like, uniformity, right? Why are we rating uniformity on a subjective, arbitrary scale? You can measure uniformity on the screen to very precise, so, like, and I don't want to overly criticize this because I think this was fine. And I mean, it happens that the projectors that I like the best in both categories did come out the winners. So I don't know, maybe that's bad because there's going to be all the Sony fans who are like, well, that can't be right. You're all wrong. And then there's going to be the people who are like, no, only these ultra short throw projectors from brands out of China you've never heard of can possibly be any good. LG can't be any good. It's too expensive. So, there's all of that going on. But I thought the ones that this panel of people picked were actually the best ones out of the, the price brackets that they gave out of the groups that they were testing. So I kind of agree with these results. I'd be happy to recommend them. I'm also perfectly fine to say, yeah, if you just want the brightest one, they found the brightest one. If you get one of the Sony projectors instead of the JVC, it's still really, really, really good. And also still very, very expensive. So, I'm fine with all of this, but I do have the little, like, quibbles with particularly, like, selecting the categories and giving these arbitrary scores, like, because what always ends up happening is people on the forums get into the minutia of the thing, and like I say, they take it like it's gospel because it has a score. There's a score, Tom. We can look at the score and we can compare the scores, and there's always the person who's like, how come the score at the very end of the overall isn't a perfect average of all the, like, there's always going to be the person who, like, does that and can't find it within themselves to actually go and ask any of these people, all of whom are on the forums, like, how was the scoring actually tabulated? Why wasn't it just a basic average at the end? Like, all of those types of things that just get debated into the ground, and I find very tedious and very tiresome. But the bottom line is this: if you just are a person who doesn't care about all of it and you want a really easy takeaway, JVC projectors have the best black levels. All right, like, this is not a contentious thing at this point.
That's not a statement.
It happens all the time. Every time JVC projectors have the best black levels. So if you care about that, there's your winner. But, who knows, Tom, because the ceiling was white.
Yeah, there's a reason why I stopped, and many websites have stopped using numbers, a number system, or a
the score.
Star system in reviews, and have just gone to like a conclusion paragraph.
Right,
and the reason is because inevitably somebody will say, you gave this one a 5, and you were giving this one a 4.5. Why is that one better? You're like, that's a 10-year-old review, you doofus.
Tom, there was an AV receiver in 2010 that scored a 9 for HDMI support, and it doesn't do HDMI 2.1. Why did you do that, Tom, in 2010?
Yeah. You absolute fraud of a reviewer. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff in there, and it's unfortunate because it's not a hard concept to grasp. It's not a hard concept when you explain it to somebody. Like, I remember having conversations with Clint and going, we can't use half points. And he's like, I don't understand why. I'm like, because you're on a 20-point scale now. He goes, I don't know, that doesn't make any sense. I'm like, let's count them up, all right?
Yes, that's right. 0.51.
Let's count them.
Wait a second, that's 2. 1.52. Wait a second, that's 4.
So, in having those, it's not hard when you explain it to people, but trying to explain it to the entire internet of people who literally don't want to listen to anything. I don't know if you noticed. People are pretty set in that they already know everything.
It's were
like talking to my children.
Happy in that projector screen shootout when the $3,000 for a movie outscored in the overall score at the end the $6,500 LG, which is the one that I have consistently said if I was going to get an ultra short throw projector, I'd want the LG because it's the only one that has dynamic tone mapping for HDR. That's always been my reasoning for why that's the one I would pick. It won this shootout, but the 4 movie wasn't in this shootout, so it's just bedlam, Tom. Just bedlam.
All right. Disney Plus now has ads in the US if you want to stay at the $8 a month price. Okay. I don't know what I paid for, but I did pay for another year of it at some point, and it was recently, and I don't have any ads, so I guess.
Oh, if you did the annual thing, this just started, so you definitely have the regular without ads, and you're locked in for a year.
Right. So unlike Netflix Basic with ads, the entire content library is available on Disney Plus with ads, and you still get 4K and HDR. Dolby Atmos is taken away, though, as are downloads on mobile devices. I don't understand. It's got to be a technical side of it. Why the Dolby Atmos gets taken away? It doesn't make any sense. That's the punishment that they're meting out to the people.
Like the no downloads on mobile devices. That makes sense because how would they serve you the ads? So that makes sense on a technical level. But why Dolby Atmos has to go away? I don't.
It must be on the technical side of it that there's something that's connected to something that there's like. Well, if
maybe it's because none of the ads are in Dolby Atmos, and they don't want audio switching that will cause an audio dropout potentially. That's probably
an immense number of people on Reddit right now do not understand why they keep their HDMI. Basically, their screen goes black, and then or something like that, or the audio cuts out, and then it's an HDMI handshake, and it's all because of audio or video resolution
format switched. Yeah.
And,
I'll bet you that's it.
Hey. I agree with you. It shouldn't happen, but at least no one can pirate movies anymore because that's what they wanted. Comments from listeners.
We didn't do the last part of it there.
We didn't do it.
That news story,
if you want your Disney Plus experience to remain the same, no ads, Atmos, and downloads. I didn't even know you could do downloads. The price has gone up to $10 a month now, which is
there you go.
Whatever. Fine.
So what you were experiencing $2 per month more expensive now. That was, of course, the goal, is to raise the price as they go along. But they're like, but we're going to give you a method of keeping the same price. It's just going to have ads now and no Atmos. That's what will happen.
Comments from Chris. Chris says we've been talking about standing waves quite a bit recently, and the popular YouTube channel Veritasium recently posted a video of their trip to the U.S. Navy's indoor ocean. That actually came across my feed. I didn't watch it. I do watch that channel. I'm apparently not enough to know how to say the stupid name, but I have watched them before. Him? Yeah, it's a him. It's just
the host, guy. But he's got a team, so.
Where they can precisely control wave patterns in the water using massive series of actuators. They show some excellent examples of standing waves and other wave interaction patterns, which might help anyone who's interested in visualizing what we've been talking about. Yes, water waves and sound waves are exactly the same, except
in many ways
through which they go. Yes.
They are different in the actual movement of what's going on in the air or in the water wave, because so we're seeing like a surface wave in the case of the water, whereas it's just a compression back and forth wave going on in the air when it comes to sound. But in terms of, visualizing why it is that you can be in this location and have this massive hump of a sound happening at a certain frequency while the very same frequency is playing, but you move over just a foot or two and now have no sound happening at that very same frequency. If you want to be able to visualize why that's able to happen, then yes, some great examples in there. And then, some of the interesting wave patterns that they can create just through this series of actuators in a tank of known dimensions. You can calculate all of that out. They have the motors tuned precisely enough that they can make all of that happen. And the reason they do this in the case of the U.S. Navy is, they're testing out. It's funny because they have these like little scale models of ships. And they're testing out all different type of wave conditions to make sure that the ship they're designing is going to be able to work. That's why they do it, and they need to be able to precisely and repeatedly recreate the exact same wave conditions over and over and over, and that's why they actually have it. So it wasn't meant for just audio wave demonstration purposes, but because waves are waves, it's a great way to be able to visualize some of the stuff we've been talking about. So I agree. We'll have the link to that video from Veritasium.
Greg wrote us a little while ago to say how he had replaced his Epson LS500 ultra short throw projector setup with this year's Epson LS800 model. Is that the one that just won?
No, it did not win because that was Epson. They were in that Epson, model, the LS800. It was in the shootout. It came in like in the middle.
Okay. Yeah. Anyways, he was pleased with the improvement, so he likes the LS800 more than the 500.
That's right.
He had never been happy with the 500, but he thought that 800 was pretty darn good. However, that TCL 98-inch TV went on sale for $5,000. Well, he was still within the return period for his 800, so he decided to go for it, and he's very happy he did. As much as I love projectors, and I do, seeing people or hearing people talk about trying to get which one is going to give them truly black bars and then getting advice like, oh, you should get this projector. I'm like, the answer is none of them because you're not going to get black bars off of them.
But so these ultra short throw projectors, Tom, they're being marketed as laser TVs. They're hearing from all over the place that
show me the black laser. Okay?
You can have the lights on. You can watch these during the day. The screens are magic. The projectors, because they're so close to the screen, Tom, it doesn't matter where the lights are. Everything is great about these laser TVs. You've got to believe it, Tom. And here Greg had one, and then he switched to a 98-inch TV. So let's hear what happened.
All right.
Yeah.
His room is not light controlled, which is why he went with a ultra short throw setup with ambient light projecting screen, but no projection setup he's tried can compare to what his 98-inch TCL looks like. He does have OLED TVs in other rooms of his house. TCL is not quite as good as those, but remarkably, he thinks maybe like 95% of the way there. He's someone who obsessed over details, and the UST of the ultra short throw projectors were just never quite right. They drove him crazy. So he's very happy TCL was able to deliver. We're happy to. We're thrilled for you. Blah.
It's one of those crazy situations where it is what we've been saying all along, and why I'm always amused by the people who are like, why didn't you say it more forcefully so that I didn't go down the wrong path? And then there's the flip side of, well, I went this way and I'm happy, so you guys were wrong, and so there you go.
Is Is it like, okay, so if we say it forcefully, people get like, well, I don't understand why you have to be so mean about it. And if you don't,
right.
if you say it nicely, they're like, I don't understand why you didn't say it more aggressively. Like, if you say it a lot, I don't understand why you guys keep repeating yourself. And if you only say it every once in a while, they're like, how come you haven't talked about Aperian speakers in a while, Rob?
That's right.
Rob, you never recommend Aperian speakers.
Can't win for trying, Tom. Can't win for trying.
Mario, our resident electrician, bought himself a new OLED just for casual viewing in the room outside their kitchen. Yes, it's going above a fireplace. And no, I don't care. All
Neither
you
does he.
people that say that TVs are too high or whatever, just stop. Just stop. They know it's too high. Their necks tell them it's too high if it is too high for them.
That's right.
If they have a recliner, probably isn't too high. He just wanted to share that he had, of course, installed conduit behind the wall a long time ago, 1.25 inch diameter. Since his new ultra high-speed HDMI cables needed to be 15 feet long, he went with Zeskit's regular passive copper ultra high-speed HDMI cables, ultra high-speed certified HDMI cables. Rob had warned that they are quite thick and stiff. Let you guys all go through the jokes in your head. Well, we're going, okay. So he was prepared to return them for fiber optic HDMI cables if necessary, but he managed to pull 2 of them through, as well as an Ethernet and an optical audio cable just in case. There might have been a little cursing along the way, but he managed. I don't blame you. Cursing is part of every job. Okay.
Yeah. So
he's got a couple of 90-degree turns in this thing, so I can see why he was cursing.
Yeah, I have one of the 16-foot Zeskit ultra high-speed certified cables. It is in-wall rated. I didn't need the in-wall rating, but it's just part and parcel of the thing. And so I do have one of those on hands. I'm like, that's a pretty beefy HDMI cable, and it is not flexible. So 1.25 inch Smurf tube. I'm almost surprised he got. Now he is a professional electrician by trade.
Like you think of a 1.25 inch. Like I wasn't really like imagining it, but
yeah.
I wasn't imagining it as small as it appeared. Like I'm surprised the connector even went through.
I know.
Honestly,
like it's just big enough for the connector. So good on him. Good on him that he managed to get that thing through. 2 of them, not at the same time. I don't think. I think one came after the other. But yeah. Congratulations. I'm glad that all worked out. And there we go.
All right. I'm scrolling. Oh, that's it.
Yep.
New for this week. New for this week? Oh, yeah. Okay. These are questions. Sorry. I'm just...
Because we actually got through all 6 questions.
Usually it just starts with the questions, and I don't have to, and then I don't read the thing because I know we're already in questions, but then it's whatever. I'm going to drink some of this Coke. Hold on.
Yes, you are. Yeah, from your very large 2-liter Coke bottle for people
I
seeing
am
it on
too lazy
on
to pour a glass. Okay,
YouTube.
that clicking, that's me holding this thing is almost empty. Raph is thinking about buying a pair of Paradigm Defiance. I thought it was Defense. Defiance X12 subwoofers. They use a 12-inch driver with a 650-watt amplifier and basically a 19-inch cube cabinet with a port that fires out the bottom. They sell for $1,800 each in Canada.
That is Canadian dollars. Yeah.
Well, one would think. And when he listened to Gene from Audioholics' YouTube video about them, he said they were well made, have decent extension down to 20 hertz, and lots of output between 40 and 80. So what do we think about them overall? I mean, I don't remember the size of Raph's room, but that's what you need. So down to 20, and anything below is pointless as far as I'm concerned. Downfiring port is nice because it makes... you don't have to worry about 6 slamming it against the wall if you really want to. The price is a little on the high side. So in the States, these sell for $300 less. They're $1,500 in the States.
Yeah, which is actually one of those things. Paradigm is often, if you just go by pure exchange rate, not a bad deal in Canada. Like if you were to take the US MSRP as the standard and then just do straight exchange rate, usually Paradigm is a better deal in Canada. But these do not
I'll tell you
have...
one thing I don't like about these things already. I'll tell you the one thing I don't like about them. The corners are too sharp. That's what I don't like about them. The corners look very sharp, and I have experienced very sharp corners before. And
those are pointy. Those aren't rounded over very much. But yeah, this is not a true linear extension right down to 20 hertz sub. And Audioholics review didn't say that it was. They basically said that the sort of bend in it is 25 hertz. This is true 25 hertz extension. Interestingly, for Paradigm, they usually just put the DIN specification as far as extension goes. But this one, they actually put the plus minus 3 dB, and they list the minus 3 dB point as 20 hertz. That is false. Like it
doesn't look like it is at 20 hertz. I'm looking at the graphs here that
it just
Gene
patently
did.
Isn't the case when, well, I mean, this is measured ground plane, 2 meter ground plane.
It's like 10 dB down.
So maybe in room, you get minus 3 dB at 20 hertz. Stick it in a corner. But yeah, anechoic or semi-anechoically, ground plane measurement, it is not minus 3 dB at 20 hertz. That is just patently not the case, as long as we're talking about semi-anechoic ground plane measurements. So by Audioholics' measurements, if you're going for the flattest response, which would be using the music mode, 25 hertz, 25 hertz extension is a real thing on this. It is still outputting sound at 20 hertz, but it is definitely down in its response at that point. So it's not like I have any gigantic problem with this subwoofer, but
just know what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah, $1,800. To me, I go, well, what else is there? What else is there around that same price or at a slightly lower price? Is there anything out there that is performing better than that for the same or less money? I think one of the considerations in this probably is the physical size as well, and that is going to be something to look at. But if we go by, CEA 2010 standardized measurements, Audioholics has their chart from all the ones that James Larson has done, and he has measured this Paradigm Defiance X12 subwoofer. He's got the measurements right in there. And so if we compare that to, say, an SVS PB2000 Pro, right? The PB2000 Pro goes for $1,500 in Canada, $1,500 Canadian dollars. So it's $300 less expensive, just as far as MSRP in Canada goes, and has significantly more 20 hertz output, right? So we're talking about the difference between the measured response that Audioholics got at 20 hertz from the Defiance X12 Paradigm sub was 92.5 dB, and then it's all the way up at 105 dB at 25 hertz. So we can see it's very steep roll-off going from 25 hertz down to 20 hertz, whereas the PB2000 Pro is 105 decibels at 20 hertz, and then it's 5 decibels louder than that at 25 hertz, and then stays pretty linear above that point. So if we're talking about full-on 20 hertz extension, for $300 less, the PB2000 Pro has significantly more 20 hertz output. Now, it is not the same physical size. It is larger. It's 22 inches in one dimension, 20 inches in another dimension, and about 17 in another. So, the 19-inch cube, if you need it to be a 19-inch cube and not any bigger than that in any dimension, well, the PB2000 Pro isn't going to meet that criteria, but I'm not sure. It's not tremendously larger overall, but some of the dimensions are a little bit smaller and some are bigger. The PC2000 Pro would have almost identical. So if this is about a footprint thing and the height doesn't matter too much, you could have the cylinder sub again.
Cylinders.
Yes, at $300 less, $300 Canadian dollars less with the PC2000 Pro, and still have that much higher output capability right down at 20 hertz. If you want a subwoofer that is just more compact, in every dimension, you could look at SVS's SB3000, sealed box 3000, which actually has almost identical output to the Defiance X12, except in a sealed box, which is actually even smaller. It's about a 16-inch cube instead of a 19-inch cube, and is $1,500 Canadian dollars. They're all the same price. All of them are $300 less than the Defiance X12, and you get either very, very similar performance in an even smaller and less expensive package via the SB3000, or you go a little bit physically larger, but $300 less expensive and get more output with a PB2000 Pro, or you get a nice small footprint with a taller and a cylinder form factor in a PC2000 Pro. So it's not that I think the Defiance X12 is a bad subwoofer. Nothing about the measurements and nothing about the subjective opinions that the crew over at Audioholics had about it says that it's a bad subwoofer. Quite the opposite. There are impressive things about it. But if we're going by the specs of for home theater and we do want to drive right down to 20 hertz, we can do so less expensively. From a brand that we obviously trust in SVS, or you can get even physically smaller if that was the really, critical part of this was the physical size, while also being less expensive and keeping virtually the same performance across the board. So that's why I would say I think you're getting a better deal with one of those SVS subwoofers simply because it's $300 less. There's the cut and dry to me. But if you were like, well, turns out I actually went and bought these X12s, do I need to return them? No, it's not like you got bad subwoofers. I'm just saying, I think you can get a little better value.
And honestly, as much as somebody out there is going to say, oh, you got to get down to 20 hertz, I am exceedingly deciding more and more that I think that that's just not as important. So this bump
well,
that it's
below 20 hertz, I don't care too much. I'd like to get pretty darn
I would
flat
like to
down
get to 20 hertz.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that that's not the case. That's
I
not
do
not
like
what
to
I'm saying.
rumble the jelly in my eyeballs sometimes.
But would you even notice? I don't think so. So I think like you said, if you bought these subs already and you have them in your house,
sure.
I wouldn't be like, oh my God, I have to return these things. They're so subpar. These are very good subs. This
should
is
go in a shootout,
like
Tom,
theme.
and declare one of them the king of subwoofers.
The king of
It's really
subs.
the only way that we can proceed.
The king of subs has to be a cylinder. I'm sorry. By definition. Where else are you going to put the crown? You got to put it on top of a cylinder. His main question is about how he might go about using room correction if he were to get the Paradigm subs. Well, we're not going to, so there you go. Done. You don't have to worry about it. The Defiance X12 comes with a calibrated microphone and Anthem room correction along with Paradigm's subwoofer control app. He's using a Denon X8500H receiver so that Odyssey, it has Odyssey Multi-Q XT32, which of course has a sub-EQ. Mm-hmm. Would he be able to gain any improvement by running ARC first and then running Odyssey second? Maybe, and that's exactly the way I would do it too. I would run the ARC first.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think so. And then run the Odyssey second. The only reason I would do it the other way around is if I just wanted to use the ARC as some way of customizing it to my taste rather than the other way around.
Yeah. I mean, the issue that I would have is ARC, when you run it, is a single subwoofer. It's a single subwoofer that's being measured. They're not being measured together, the pair of them, which means that any correction that it's applying is equalization that's being applied to a single subwoofer with the goal of trying to make that single subwoofer measure as linearly as possible in the little measurement cluster. It does like a 5 or 6 measurement cluster, but it's only attempting to make that single subwoofer as linear as possible. Now, once you then have both subwoofers playing together, that completely changes the wave pattern. It might be that you didn't need to equalize each subwoofer individually, trying to make each subwoofer as linear as it can be. In fact, doing so can have very unintuitive results, where you get each subwoofer individually playing as linearly as it can be, and then when they play together, you end up with a weird dropout or hump that wouldn't have been as pronounced if you had just left their native response alone. So I'm not really in favor myself of trying to run an equalization that only addresses a single subwoofer first, because I think you end up just undoing a lot of that once you have both subwoofers playing together anyway, and it all becomes kind of redundant and pointless. And then B, you can have the instances where having done that single subwoofer equalization first individually on both of them counterintuitively gives you worse results than if you had just left them alone. So for me, if this was like the reason you were thinking maybe I will pay $600 more for this pair of subwoofers so that I can have Anthem room correction, I'm like, nah, I actually think it's the reverse. I would not really want to use it just because it's really only addressing one subwoofer at a time. So my goal is, you want to run both subwoofers together in mono. You do need to figure out the physical placement part of it first, which I don't know a way to do that doesn't involve trial and error. Like whether you're doing it all by your ears and just playing sweeps on repeat over and over and gradually adjusting relative positions and gradually adjusting phase if you can't do physical position changes, or if you're measuring it. But if you're measuring it, you're going to be measuring over and over and over. You're going to make a little change, you're going to remeasure, you're going to make a little change, you're going to remeasure. So it's trial and error and tedium either way. But to try and get that nice uniformity across at least like a 3-seater couch first, and then you just equalize them together, which Odyssey will handle absolutely fine, equalizing them together. In no part of that do I end up actually using the Anthem room correction on each sub individually. So I don't know, that's my take on it.
I think I wrote an article about this that says don't ever use the This is the thing. If some people are going, they just can't not use the room, the EQ that's in their sub. It's there. They paid extra for it. It's like throwing money away to them. And in fact, maybe you threw $300 away by getting it. Maybe that was what you spent $300 extra on. So
at least you got 2 microphones out of it. You got
true.
that.
Not that you can really use those for much of anything. But if you're going to do it, I'm going to do it before and not after. But that's just like Rob said, you could be doing more harm than good.
It's possible.
Nick.
Yeah. So as far as the subwoofer control app, very similar capabilities in the Anthem Room or the Paradigm subwoofer control app and the SVS subwoofer control app. So if it was in terms of the convenience of being able to make adjustments from your seat without having to physically get up and change something on dials on the back of your subwoofer, you can do that with the SVSs as well for sure. So yeah, that's still my take. I'd still point you to an SVS in this case.
Nick's dad just moved to Hawaii, where everything's really inexpensive. He'd like to install an 85-inch TV in the living room, which has lots of light coming in. He'll be using the TV both during the day and at nighttime, so he's hoping for a flat panel that can handle both lighting situations as well as possible for around $2,000. He'd also like the TV to be as thin as possible, but Nick already explained to him that the thinnest TVs are edge-lit and don't look anywhere near as good as a TV that has a local dimming. But TVs with full array local dimming tend to be a bit thicker, and his dad definitely agreed, and he cares about picture quality more, so he says.
Yes.
We will see when you show him how thick the TV is that we're going to recommend. So what do we suggest? Well, so OLED is going to be out.
Just for the price, yeah.
Price, and also if it is a high light situation, you do have to worry about direct sunlight onto the TV screen because it can
a little
age
bit
the OLED stuff. I don't worry about it as much. I don't own one. That's part of it. My room is completely blacked out. That's the other part of it. But also, I think that it's completely overstated concern. Like, there will be people who are like,
I don't agree with the whole OLEDs can't go in bright room thing at all. I actually think they have the best not so much reflection handling. What OLEDs do the best in bright lit situations is continue to still make black look black, because all LCD TVs, even the ones with the best reflection handling, just the TV is off, all right? It's literally powered off. The screen doesn't look pitch black anymore, right? You get some reflection of light just on the black screen itself, whereas OLEDs, or at least LG-based OLEDs, because this isn't quite true for the QD OLEDs from Samsung. The QD OLEDs, they get a little bit gray as well with a whole bunch of light in the room. The LG-based OLEDs, that screen stays black when it's completely off, but in a well-lit room. So I love that about them, but price-wise, we're just not going to be able to get the 83-inch OLED for $2,000. So alternatives here, I think...
Yeah, we're going to be suggesting, or Rob is going to be suggesting LCD-based panels, basically, because of, just the price point for the size and also, how bright they can get during the day.
They do get very, very bright. So I think the top choice here by quite a margin is TCL's new R655 series. Artings Ratings has fully reviewed this. It is really good across the board. Does it have the tiniest bit of blooming if you have black bars with a subtitle in it? Sure. It's still full array local dimming. There's still going to be a little bit of that, but I mean, it gets astonishingly bright. The glare reflection handling that it has is really good. And, as far as the thinness goes, okay, it's got the design where it's thinner at the top and a little bit thicker at the bottom. And, it gets to about 2.5 inches, almost 3 inches on that bottom part, but it's certainly not, super, super thick in any way. So comes in right at $2,000. The biggest problem, though, by far, is it's not in stock right now. Not at any of the Best Buy. Best Buy is the exclusive retailer for this TCL R655 in the 85-inch size. So it's just not in stock in any of the locations in Hawaii. There are 3 Best Buys in Hawaii. None of them have it in stock. It's not in stock in any of the mainland ones either at the moment. But they were selling them, just a month ago. They ran out of stock. There will be restock coming. It's fully listed on the website. But if you need it in a hurry, you just can't get it today. I did want to give a little warning that there is another 85-inch TCL from 2021. That is the R745 series. It is significantly worse in every way. All right, the local dimming wasn't as good, the screen uniformity wasn't as good, the reflection handling is way worse. It has no HDMI 2.1, it's physically thicker. Like all the things that you wanted, the R745 version from a year ago doesn't have, so you can't just say get an 85-inch TCL. You got to be pretty specific on this one. It's the R655 that has come out looking like a real champion this year. So yeah, I like the way from Arting's demonstrations, the way that it handles reflections. Again, the screen out of LCDs, it stays pretty darn black. Like it is not as nearly as black as an OLED looks, but it's darker than a lot of LCD screens come out. And then because it's a little bit of a semi-matte finish, you don't get really clear reflections. It sort of diffuses the reflections just a little bit, but without scattering the light, unnecessarily wide. So I think it handles everything about what you described in pretty darn good fashion. Now, if you want an alternative, one that is in stock being the main reason, if your dad's willing to pay $300 more, if he's willing to up the budget to $2,300, they do have stock of Samsung's QN90A. Now that's actually from 2021. That's what's getting the price of that flagship 4K model down to $2,300, but they do still have stock of the 85-inch QN90A. It is about as thin as you're going to get with a full array local dimming TV. It is pretty darn thin in its side profile, so if that was a really top priority, can't complain about that. The one weird thing is this has probably one of the best anti-glare screens, but if you have a bright little light source, it scatters the light horizontally like a rainbow. And it's really noticeable. And so if you have sort of like diffuse light, like, you just have light during the day and it's diffuse in the living room, it handles that really, really well, probably better than just about anything else. But if you have some pinpoint part of light, it scatters its light across the screen like a rainbow, and I find that really distracting. So the talk of Samsung having, the best anti-glare, anti-reflective screens, in some ways I think that's true. In this rainbow scattering way, I think it's completely off the mark, and I would much rather have the TCL, the way that it handles that type of reflection. So other models that are in stock for $2,000, Samsung's Q80B and Sony's X90K. Those both go for $2,000. They both are in stock. They are good TVs, but they are not anywhere near the level in measurements or just overall performance of the two that I mentioned. So if it's just a matter of, I got to get a TV for $2,000 and I got to get it right now, the Q80B, it's not the end of the world. You have a vertically aligned LCD panel in that one in the 85-inch size. So what you're reading about on the reviews for the smaller sizes that use the ADS type panel doesn't apply specifically to the 85-inch size. The 85-inch size has better black levels and better contrast in its panel in that Q80B, but it's just like for $300 more, the QN90A is so much better in every way that it's easily worth the $300 more. And then the Sony X90K really isn't well suited to a brightly lit room. They didn't target that with that model. So I think it'll be either the Samsung Q90A or wait a little bit for the TCL R655 to come back in stock. That is my top choice.
Aaron wants to get the best blend between the speakers and the pair of subwoofers. He's using a Denon X3800H to power Polk audio front surrounds and 2 pairs of overheads. His subs are a pair of Velodyne 10-inch models. Dude, what is the deal with Velodyne suddenly showing up on this podcast like crazy?
It's back.
They are apparently back. Who knew? I wasn't sure they left. I just kind of forgot about them. And then in the Denon receiver, the crossover got set to 80 hertz for his 5 ear-level speakers, and the 4 overhead speakers got set to 150. The LPF or LFE setting for the subwoofer got left at 120 hertz, which is good. That's what you want to do. His Velodyne subs have their own crossover knobs, and he was under the impression that they should be set to 80 hertz. Which settings are going to give him the best blend for everything? Well, you should leave everything alone, except because everything is set just fine as far as I'm concerned.
In the AV receiver, that all sounds right and perfectly reasonable.
And his Velodyne, you should set the crossover as high as possible, and you will be done. That is it. You should not. You have cascading crossovers right now.
At the moment, that's right.
And you need to fix that by setting with the crossover knob on the Velodyne as high as it will go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if you want to picture what's going on there right now, let's say in the low frequency effects channel, that LPF for LFE, that stands for the low pass filter for the dedicated low frequency effects channel. Right now, like the way things are mastered, they might have put sounds in there all the way up to 120 hertz at full volume, which in full reference volume could be all the way up to 115 decibels. That's possible that some mixer put a 110 hertz frequency into the dedicated low frequency effects channel at 115 decibels. Maybe that's what they did. Right now, with your crossover knob, the physical crossover knob on the subwoofer set to 80 hertz, you are filtering that off. You're making that quieter than what the signal was asking for, specifically in that low frequency effects channel. And there's no need to do that. Right now, when the speakers and subwoofer are crossing over for your 5 ear level speakers at 80 hertz, the subwoofer is getting even quieter above 80 hertz than it really should be. There's already a filter being applied by the AV receiver at 80 hertz on the subwoofer through its bass management. You are applying a second filter. That's why we call it a cascading filter. You have 2 filters on top of each other. So the subwoofer above 80 hertz is quieter than it should be. So the simple solution there, you turn that crossover knob up as high as it can possibly go, which might be 200, 250 hertz, something like that. That means, yes, it's still applying a filter above that, but there's not really much anything playing way up there at, say, 200 hertz or something like that. So at that point, we've essentially bypassed the filter that's built into the subwoofer, and we're letting the bass management all be handled by the AV receiver. That's how it should go.
There may be I don't know what that's on the back of that Velodyne, but there may be a crossover defeat
bypass setting, or that's
I have linked up 3 articles that talk about all the things that Rob just said in detail on AV gadgets, so that will
good
give you some good reading. Billy, last week Billy was looking for in-wall speaker suggestions. He appreciated our recommendations, so we'll look into Aperion Theatris, whatever.
Theatris.
Folk out 300 series and KEF Q series that we talked about, but Tom's comments about room treatments got his attention. Good.
You freaked him out, Tom.
What?
Scary.
The room, of course, is quite small. It's fairly carpeted. He has 2 panels on each side wall at the first reflection points, 1 panel on the ceiling, and 1 panel on his back wall, and 2 corner bass traps in the rear corners above his door. He thought that would be sufficient, but Tom seems to think otherwise. The answer to that, do I have enough room treatments, is no. Always for me.
I mean, like, not literally always, but
it is almost literally always. Like, if you can ask the question, like, if the question isn't, do I have too many? Because I literally shoehorned everyone I could in here. That's the answer is almost certainly you do not have enough. He thought that, okay, so what more should he add and what specific locations and products should he be aiming for? I thought I mentioned some of this on the podcast last week, didn't I?
I think it was a different one. We didn't get specific for Billy's.
Yeah, so he's got that weird window thing, right?
There is a little window being covered up on his right wall. Yeah.
So, and I thought he should put something there. I thought I said that he should put panels there. I'm not sure he can put a panel to the left of his couch because it looks like it's so close to the wall that a panel would obstruct any
possibly
movement.
Yeah.
And there is the bass trapping you've got in your top corners up there. You could actually put another tri-trap type panel that goes
going across the wall to ceiling corners
transition.
So like the soffit trap type of look, something like that. That's entirely doable. I mean, in terms of what you have for bass trapping, it's pretty minimal at the moment, right?
Yes.
Like I know those are big beefy traps, but it really is just the upper couple 3 feet of the corners, just in the rear corners. Basic, counterintuitively, because again, he was kind of like, well, with the smaller room, do you need to treat it that much? Counterintuitively, the smaller the room, the more bass trapping you end up needing, because what you end up with is the standing waves and the resonance of that room ends up being at a higher frequency when the dimensions of the room get smaller, right? When you're thinking about what wavelength evenly fits into a given dimension of this room, well, it's a shorter wavelength. It's a higher frequency when the dimensions of the room are smaller. So we end up with the problematic frequencies being in the range where passive room treatments do a better job of treating it than multiple subwoofers do, right? When you have the large room, multiple subwoofers end up being the better way of treating standing waves in that, because they're at lower frequencies where passive room treatments would just have to be, unreasonably thick to do anything. But in the smaller room, nice big bass traps end up treating the standing wave problem better than dual subwoofers do or quad subwoofers do, because it's going to be up at 90 hertz, 100 hertz, something like that. And you end up with the passive treatments being the better case there. So wherever you are, essentially wherever you're able to put bass traps, it'd be a good idea to do so. It'll help out. Again, it's one of these things where when you treat the bass of the room, it's amazing the effect it has on the mid-range and treble. Not so much if you measured it, but how you perceive it changes greatly, because when you clean up the bass, it cleans up any masking effects that ringing bass in your room was having on your perception of the mid-range and treble. And it can make a big, big difference, more in your perception than the measurements might even indicate, just because of the way our brains end up perceiving bass wave interaction versus mid-range and treble in a non-objective way that a measurement microphone does. Our brains don't work the same way. So yeah, I'm looking at all those wall to ceiling corners and thinking, soffit traps can basically go up there. In terms of like specific sidewall reflections and that I think you've done a perfectly reasonable job. Treating the 2 panels on each side wall is pretty fine for the first reflection points. You've got a panel on the ceiling at the first reflection point. If there's some way to put some more panels on the back wall, I know where are you going to really do it? You'd have to put one on below the door that goes into your...
That back left speaker, there's definitely space there.
Yeah, so, I wouldn't mind having a little bit more specific wall treatment on the back wall if at all possible, but I'm mainly looking at, the wall-to-ceiling corners and soffit traps up there would be ideal.
Let me read something from an article I just found online. It says about downsides to small home theaters. Most importantly, room acoustics get much more difficult to control in smaller rooms. In a small bedroom home theater, the bass is going to be bouncing around like crazy. This makes having dual subwoofers and setting them up properly much more important. It also means that acoustic panels will have to be employed much more generously, especially bass traps, in order to get everything to sound even. This person is brilliant, whoever wrote... Oh, that was me. So, I have linked that up for you.
Over at avgadgets.com.
Over at avgadgets.com. It's almost like these questions that we get on this podcast often get answered on AV Gadgets as well. So if you have a question for us, a little search over AV Gadgets might help you out. Just might.
Oh, but don't discourage people from asking, Tom. We want the questions.
I am not discouraging you from asking. Yes, you're welcome to ask. Just so you know. Might already be answered. Gurinder. In Gurinder's basement home theater, the air supply registers, forced air from the furnace and air conditioning coming into the room, are at the front of the room. He has been planning to install a false wall with an acoustically transparent screen. There would be about 2 feet of space behind it, so those air registers would be behind the false wall and screen. Will that be an issue? Will the acoustically transparent screen hinder the airflow? Will the heating and cooling be any sort of issue? Now, as far as airflow is concerned, if your acoustically transparent wall is hindering airflow, it is not acoustically transparent.
Yeah, as far as like ventilation goes, no problem there.
Yeah, so what you would worry about was heat. That was what I would
could it trap some heat? That's not impossible. That it would make the heat dissipation throughout the room a little bit uneven, because you're gonna have like the black backing on the back of the acoustically transparent screen. You're gonna have whatever fabric it is. Yeah, the distribution of heat that could potentially be.
Yeah, I would worry about my screen in particular. I mean, the acoustically transparent fabric, it might like age it or somehow, you know what I mean? You make it sad or something.
We don't know this for sure. This is some speculation on our part. This wouldn't be a bad question for an HVAC specialist or something. I think that'd be well worth your while just to ask about, okay, I'm going to have just tell it you're going to have a fabric wall, right? Like that's what you're more or less creating. I'm going to have a fabric wall. HVAC wise, heating and cooling wise, is that going to have any impact? If it's very breathable fabric, that's all you have to describe, because not all HVAC specialists are familiar with acoustically transparent projection screens. But if you say I'm going to have a fabric wall, it's very breathable. Do I need to be concerned about any of the heating or cooling aspects of it? That would be something I'd ask an HVAC specialist about. One solution that does come to mind, though, is you certainly can have register extensions. right? So if this is a matter of just literally putting in a physical baffle to direct the airflow out of those registers to, grates that you install in your acoustically transparent wall, right? Not the screen itself, obviously, but you're going to have a false wall with areas around the screen, maybe some above it, maybe just to either side of it. So if necessary, there's a solution, because visually it's all going to be hidden behind that false wall still, but you might just put in physical air baffles to direct the air from the existing registers around your screen. Maybe talk to an HVAC specialist if you need to do that.
So right now he owns a pair of SVS PB13 Ultra subs. They are, of course, front firing and front ported. Once the room is complete, he intends to run a bunch of bass sweeps on repeat to help him determine the best locations. Isn't this an enclosed room? It's not an enclosed room, because the best location...
It is now. That's what he's doing. That's why all this work is happening, is to finally make it an enclosed room.
Yeah, well, you don't need to run bass sweeps. You just put them where they go, and it'll be fine.
Well, you still want to confirm. You want to sit in all three seats and listen to those bass sweeps and make sure it really is uniform, Tom.
After you run your room correction, yes, you do.
No, before you run your room correction,
well,
either
way, you should still be able to hear whether or not it worked. So he's toying with the idea of changing his huge box subs for cylinders. If he does that in the future, can he feel confident placing the cylinder subs in the same locations? Or would the change to down-firing drivers with top ports if he gets the PC4000s? This room is not that big, is it? It's not really that big.
No, it's not that big. You don't really need PC4000s or PB13 Ultras, for that matter, anymore. Yeah.
Or a rear port, if he gets the PC2000 Pros, demand that he go through the tedium of playing bass sweeps on repeat all over again. I don't think you needed to play the bass sweeps to begin with. I just think you
just trust that in the rectangular room you can put them in the locations. That's right. That is one way. So I mean, the super pedantic, obsessive compulsive, anal retentive answer is that yes, you would go through the tedium again just to make sure, just to double check. But by all the math, you shouldn't have to. By all the math, if you found good locations for dual subwoofers, can there be, tiny little changes in some of the upper frequencies coming out of those subwoofers that the wave pattern could change a little bit from the orientation of the subwoofer, essentially, is what we're talking about. Like I say, if you're being super anal retentive, it's not completely out of the question, but by and large, you really shouldn't need to worry if you made that type of change. Yeah.
Yes, I would not.
Tom's
worry
not
about
happy.
it.
He's just like,
one
just don't do it.
iota. There's just no.
Tom,
there was
what
no.
if there was a 1.5 decibel change in the measurement? You run the Room EQ Wizard and you measure it, and one of those frequencies is a 1.5 decibel change.
Slam one in one corner or in the middle of one wall, and slam the other in the opposite corner or in the middle of the opposite wall. You run your room correction, you sit down, and you go, "Oh, this sounds great."
A sweep.
And then you. Yeah. No, you don't have to do that. I'm telling you. Just sit down and enjoy, and you're done.
Oh, you got to play a sweep.
I'm not playing a sweep. Who's got the time? Gurinder's wife surprised him by doing the primer on the theater's walls while he was at work. It seemed like a good, let's say, opportunity to get around to painting and maybe get their garage space back, which is acting as storage for everything that was in the home theater at the moment. Mm-hmm. He went with a neutral gray paint, like we so often recommend, but it turned out to be lighter in shade than he expected. Yes, when you put it on, it looks darker, and then it dries lighter. That's just the way these things are. So is that going to be a big problem? God help us. God help us.
He's going
There's
projection,
literally
Tom.
nothing about any of these questions that we've had to date that are a big problem. Except the subwoofer crossover knob being in the wrong location. That's the only big problem and that's not even that big.
That really was.
It's a moderate.
To be fair, he's probably not going to notice that he made
Yes, I know, right?
But no, these walls, they're gray, but they're not as dark gray as he thought they were going to be. Projection set up, Tom.
Is that going to be a big problem? He's got black velvet fabric that will be covering the front third of the room and all around the projection screen, doing a whole second paint job to make it as dark a gray as he envisioned. Just takes extra time. What do we think?
I mean, you know what Tom thinks. I think you can tell him his tone.
Do I have to say it out loud? I mean, I think you know where I stand on this. I'm like...
Tom's okay with a white ceiling. He's all right with a white ceiling.
I literally do not care, because I think that's going to make zero difference, but whatever.
I think you'll be fine. If you somehow transported yourself to a magical world where you could A/B compare the room with the darker gray that you had envisioned and this lighter gray, even then, I don't think you're honestly going to notice much difference when you're actually watching a movie on a projection screen. Having the front third of your room completely blacked out is a big help. There are a lot of light reflections from the screen that come back to the screen, from that direction. So if you were to measure it very precisely, I think there would be a difference from the reflections in the room. But mainly, honestly, the sheen, quite frankly, the sheen matters more than the shade. So if you had said, oh, this actually turned out to be considerably glossier paint than I had intended, I would be still not very concerned, but slightly more concerned than the shade of gray not being quite as dark. As long as the sheen is, kind of matte, then I think you're perfectly fine. Save the time.
Yes, I would save the time. And believe me, okay, because everybody else is like, oh my God, I can't believe Tom's saying that. You know what Tom's also factoring that none of you fools are factoring in? Tom's married. Okay? Tom knows what it would entail to look at his wife and go, it's not exactly the right color, so I think we have to do it again. I'm like, nope, that's not going to fly. That's just, she did a lot of work, and you need to appreciate it, and you need to just go, okay, that's good enough. That's good enough.
I went in Sherwin-Williams lineup, I went a shade darker than Tom did. You went with Network, right? You had the Sherwin-Williams Network.
So. Network, yeah.
And I went with the Software, which is one shade darker. I wouldn't have minded going even one darker than that. I could have gone even one darker than that. But
I wouldn't have minded going darker, but you know what? This room is, I think it looks, what I don't want is like a just black room, because it looks weird and dungeony. And this has enough offset color to the shade wise, to the or brightness wise, I guess, to the black panels that I have in here that I'm not. I mean, you guys can see it.
That's right.
Preston. So Rob rewatched Avatar in preparation for seeing Avatar: The Way of Water, right? Has that come out? Yeah, I guess not. Oh, whatever.
It's coming out this week. I'm going to see it this Thursday. By the time you're listening to this podcast, I might have seen it.
Check out his Hive if it's back up to find out his thoughts.
That's right.
But Preston didn't hear any mention of Rob watching it in 3D on his precious Sony Z9D. It says Z because it's in
Canada.
Canada. And come to think of it, Preston can't recall Rob ever specifically mentioning his 3D movie watching experience on the Z9D. Do you even 3D, bro? He asks. Do you, Rob? Do you 3D? Do you?
I do. Yes, I have watched the 3D content on my Z9D, if you're in America, and I have talked about it on the podcast, but it wasn't like super frequent or anything like that. It is active 3D shutter glasses, not my absolute pinnacle favorite. I would have preferred passive 3D if at all possible, but you just couldn't have all the things. You couldn't have 4K HDR Dolby Vision and 3D and passive 3D. It just didn't exist. So I had to make that sacrifice with the active 3D shutter glasses. I have not dug out all of my Blu-ray discs, so I was not going to do that just for Avatar, because I wanted to rewatch Avatar just so I was familiar with the story going into Avatar: The Way of Water. I didn't want to misremember and not remember any of the characters and stuff.
Oh, that compelling story.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure I was up to date on the story and characters. I will fully admit, I think it is a movie that, you kind of need the 3D to get the full effect of it. It made a significant difference watching it in 3D. So I do 3D, Preston, but I didn't on this particular one because I've just only recently moved back into my apartment and I haven't dug all my Blu-rays back out of their boxes. That's the reason.
Mm-hmm. If you're just a filthy casual. You're not even serious about the AV game. Your AV game is weak. He asks, again, lastly, what's up with the movie studios releasing 3D Blu-rays in Europe and Japan, but not in North America? 3D Blu-rays do have region codes, so it isn't always the easiest thing to import them either. They hate you. Specifically you, not the rest of us who don't care about 3D movies, but you too. They hate you. They specifically told me. They said that Rob and that Preston guy, they suck.
Something like that. Yeah. No, I don't know. I mean, all the movie studios, they do have basically.
There's got to be a reason for it. There's got to be a reason that 3D must sell better over there or something. I can't.
Yeah, it isn't like global releases. They don't have the single. They have distribution centers is basically what you have, right?
Yeah.
In different regions, you have different distribution centers. So whatever, they must have run the numbers, or maybe they didn't run the numbers. Maybe it's just a matter of they just left it alone, and the people over in Europe and Japan are like, whatever, we'll just keep doing what we've been doing until, somebody from the parent company comes down and yells at us. Whereas they must have run the numbers in North America and say, yeah, we're not selling enough of these 3D Blu-rays to bother making them anymore for this region. So I don't know, it's some kind of numbers game, or just, this market is so small already that we didn't even bother changing it. So we're still making 3D releases over there. I mean, they're still making 3D releases for the movie theaters. So, that stuff still exists. The process of converting what was shot into 3D has already been done. So putting, recompressing that file and putting it onto a disc, whatever the process was, obviously they can continue doing it in some regions. But yeah, it must just be a bean counting thing that at the very least was done in North America and maybe just either not done or still made sense to release them elsewhere.
Yeah, I don't know. He doesn't have any idea.
Yeah, a lot of the ones that you can import from the UK, because this is how I've obtained a lot of my 3D discs, is importing them from the UK, thankfully have been region free and work just fine. But yeah, it is a thing you need to check on. And I still have my Oppo that can do region free stuff.
Mike bought 2 pairs of Emotiva's Volta in-ceiling speakers with the intention of installing them as Atmos overheads. They do not come with any backer boxes or back cans, and Emotiva doesn't sell any, so he followed our usual advice and gave Emotiva a call to ask what volume of air they recommend for any DIY rear enclosure. Their response was that they're designed to work in an infinite baffle design, with the backs open, and that they don't recommend using any backer box. That seems strange. What are our thoughts? Call again and ask for somebody different.
Well, because that could be a code violation. So that's a weird answer. Because
that's not a good answer. Not for an in-ceiling speaker. That's just
if you were installing these in the ceiling of an attic, they have to have a rear enclosure so that insulation can't fall in there from your attic, and most importantly, that you have a fire stop. That, by code, you have to have a rear enclosure if they're going in the ceiling, and above that ceiling is your attic. So that's a weird answer. Now, I will just fall back on the pretty universal answer for in-ceiling speakers, which is if you have a rear enclosure, that is 1 cubic foot in volume of air. It will work. Is it necessarily optimal if you were designing this as a sealed speaker? Is that exactly the volume of air that would be 100% optimal? No, not always. But there's essentially no situation where a 1 cubic foot volume of air is going to create a problem that wouldn't exist if the back was still just completely open. Like you're not going to run into a situation where it actively made anything worse. So that's why it's my steadfast, simple answer. You're just never going to create an acoustic problem by having 1 cubic foot volume of air for standard in-ceiling speakers. So you can fall back on that because it's just not going to be a problem. But yeah, that is a weird answer to have received from Emotiva. I entirely disagree with that, just because they should have an answer for anyone who needs to be within code. So even if it's the same person, maybe that's the way to approach this. Maybe just say, hey, I'm installing these. Above these is my attic. By code, I have to have a rear enclosure. What should that rear enclosure be? That might be just a way of reframing the question to get a viable answer.
Yeah. Call again.
Yeah.
You got, it's fine. It's fine. I have given out in not just this podcast, but in life, when people have called and I needed to have an answer for you, and I thought I knew the right answer, and it was the wrong answer. I have given out bad advice before. It has happened. It will happen in the future. It has happened probably today, and it will happen tomorrow. So, yes, you just maybe got somebody new, or somebody who thought they knew the right information. They are wrong. It's fine. Call again. Dale. So Dale wrote us a few weeks ago because he was concerned he might want to exchange the Denon X3800H receiver and a pair of SVS SB1000 Pro subs that we recommended to him for his forthcoming dedicated home theater that he's setting up in a spare bedroom. He tried them out in his open living room and found them anemic sounding. And we said, if I remember correctly, something along the lines of, don't worry about it. When you get them in the small room, they'll be fine. You're putting these itty bitty subs in the very big room. Of course, they're going to sound anemic. You have to just wait. Anyways, his feelings were hurt by our response. He felt like we made him sound like an idiot for being concerned about the way they sounded in his living room when the intention is to install them in a much smaller enclosed bedroom in the near future. So let's address all of that first. Go ahead, Rob. I'll let you go first, since the Canadian should always lead off in these situations, because I'm just going to make things worse.
I see. Well, I will always, like, in a situation like this, which is a misunderstanding, I will absolutely apologize. I will say I'm sorry. That's no surprise coming from a Canadian, I don't think. And maybe it doesn't mean that much because we say sorry at the drop of a hat. So I do apologize for that. But this is an instance where, it's a misunderstanding. It wasn't our intention. Certainly never our intention to make somebody feel like an idiot for asking a question. What happens if anybody feels like we're making them sound like an idiot for asking a question? Well, this whole podcast is going to end, at least in this format, because that just wouldn't work out at all. So I am very sorry about that, but I would like to explain that, yes, misunderstanding on that part. Now, this is a matter of, I think, tone more than content. I think part of the misunderstanding was we're going to address some of what's going on with the AV receiver side of things. Most of the comment about what a difference the room is going to make was about the subwoofers. That was primarily where we're talking about it. And we actually didn't have full communication about what was going on the AV side of things, receiver side of things. And we are going to address that in just a moment coming up. So, I think that's that part. Tom, if you wanted to say anything in response, just wanted to address it.
So let me tell you what I do when I get my feelings hurt online in general. This in emails and stuff like that. This is what I do. I write the email that lays out all of my feelings about the subject. And
yes, this is a good therapeutic thing to do.
Yeah. And then I put it in my drafts for a day or two or three. And then I go back to it when my blood is cooled, as they say.
Yep. Adrenaline has lowered. Yep.
And I either amend it, or most of the times I just straight up delete it. If you listen to what we were saying, first of all, there's two things about this podcast that I think everybody realizes until they ask a question. This podcast is two things. It's informative and is attempting to be, during the informative parts of it, also a little entertaining. Okay? That's just the nature of what this podcast. If it was just informative, it would just be monotone, and
right.
I mean, it would put you to sleep.
And I mean,
which
this
would be
is
great for my wife.
Not the first time that criticism of us in our tone has happened. And yes, we do need the reminder.
It's mostly my tone. Let's be honest here. It's mostly my tone.
Well, it's weird because, I mean, honestly, I mean, not to share too much about the personal side of the email, but I mean, he did seem to address a little bit more of it towards Tom. And I go, well, I don't even think that's right. I want to defend Tom because I was saying the same stuff. So I don't know why Tom gets, Tom gets criticized for it more than I did. We said the same thing. So it's usually appropriate.
Like I said, we had somebody come over here this weekend and they had listened to the podcast, and their comment was, "You're kind of like this in real life too." I'm like, it really is. I have lost many friendships because people don't.
That's really
don't
the
like
main thing. That's why I do want to say it. This is a misunderstanding of tone, because if you read the transcript, it comes across different, right? That's often what happens.
Yeah.
So I hope that we can smooth things over. And I mean, look, I certainly know hearing something, whether sometimes not even directed at me at all, right? Like some nebulous thing that I just disagree with, and you get that emotional rise that happens to everybody.
If I leave a comment on Reddit, I never go back to read the comments that come after it, because it's just there's nothing good that comes after one of my comments. Occasionally somebody will say something nice, but most of the time it's just vitriol and snark. Right. And I'm like, you know what? I don't need any of that, so I don't go back and read them.
And so, I mean, absolutely. We had some snark in our response. Yeah. I will certainly apologize for that, but it was not intended to be hurtful. That is important. Intention is really, really important when it comes to matters of what an apology should be. And it was not meant to be hurtful. We certainly were not trying to make you sound like an idiot, because you brought
that to that conversation. We didn't bring that to the conversation.
Sure.
When you came in there thinking, being defensive, and that's fine. Possibly, a lot of people do that, and
because it happens.
You read into what we were saying as us trying to make some sort of trying to make you feel in a certain way. I'm trying to entertain everybody else who's listening to the podcast, and Rob is trying to inform as at the same time, and that is what this podcast
Yeah, very
is.
often it's when we're chuckling at things, when we're laughing at things. I completely get that it feels like we're laughing at you when it's your question. And it is important to clarify, like, that almost all of the time we're laughing because it's something we've done ourselves. It's something we thought ourselves. It's something that comes up all the time. And we laugh at it because, well, what else are we going to do? You know, I mean, it's you laugh at it because it's funny. Honestly, but we're not laughing at you, and we hope that you can now laugh with us.
I scrolled through the rest of those emails on a little bit of the email threads, and Rob's like providing huge amount of information to help out, and God forbid that we say anything in any sort of tone that might make somebody feel even the littlest bit slighted. Listen. If that's, feel free to write in questions for the podcast. We're happy to answer them here. We're also happy to just have you write in, and if with a question and say, listen, I don't really want this on the podcast, but if you have a quick answer, Rob will probably answer you. He might not if it's long and drawn out. He might say, listen.
Sometimes the question is short, the answer is not, and that is my time, and I don't have it all the time.
So I mean, there's ways of doing this. Plus, there's AV gadgets. There's tons of information over there, and I answer a lot of stuff there too. So if you don't want to be answered on the podcast, that's fine. But if you get answered on this podcast, just expect that the way we answer everybody else's questions is exactly the same way we're going to answer your question, and that might involve some.
And hopefully, when you do hear someone else's question, and you are chuckling at it, you understand that. Okay, you weren't thinking that person was an idiot. You're going, hey, that's a question. Maybe I had it and I now know the answer, or that's something I hadn't thought of. But you hear the answer, you go, oh, that is kind of funny. That is always the tone that we're going for. We're looking at, like, it's home theater. Okay, nobody's gonna die from this. None of this is life and death. It should be light and fun. So that's what we're trying to keep it. Let's get on to the questions.
So the real issue from when he tried his new Denon receiver and the SB1000 Pro subs in his living room is that it was unexpected. It was such an unexpectedly stark difference from what he was already using. It really seemed like something had to be wrong. Yes, it's going to be a different experience in a smaller enclosed room, but should a Denon X3800H be that much quieter and anemic sounding than his Integra? And should the pair of SB1000 Pros be that incapable of producing bass in his living room? The answer could be very much yes.
The subwoofers possibly, certainly down
well,
to
not only
hertz,
that,
but
did you put them in exactly the same place? Like, exactly. Like, we just had a question where somebody moved a foot and suddenly their bass changed dramatically. Could there be a slight difference in where your subs are placed versus where the other ones were placed? There could be. There could be a lot of things going on.
Sizes, probably, but the AV receiver one I do want to address. So anyway, the last of the question there.
So that's why he's thinking he should maybe exchange them. It wasn't just a little quieter, where it would be easy to imagine them sounding perfectly fine in a smaller room. This is a big, big wrong sounding difference. Okay. Well,
yeah. So this did come up just because. Well, I didn't think to say this, which is that out of the box on the Denon and Marantz AV receivers these days, they do come shipped in eco mode, and very
that's
similar
be
to
like a California or
it's to get the Energy Star rating.
It's
all about getting the Energy Star rating, because the Energy Star rating is based on the default out of the box.
Yeah.
And so like happens with OLED TVs, where they look pretty crappy out of the box because they're coming in the Energy Star power saver mode. The Denon and Marantz receivers are shipped in their eco mode, and maybe it's just being pedantic, but I think it's entirely possible that it was in eco mode. You have to actively manually turn that on.
That affect the subwoofers?
Well, that part, I don't know. It shouldn't impact the subwoofers. So,
the subwoofers have their own amp, so it's not like they're in eco mode, because they're extremely efficient.
A side thing, but I mean, it could be a case of SB1000 Pros in a wide open room. If you're playing a sweep down to 20 hertz and you're not hearing much at 20 hertz, that changes dramatically in the small room. But the AV receiver, you're right. Like going from a Integra receiver to a Denon X3800H, if there's some dramatic drop in the sound, I think eco mode is a highly likely suspect, because it really does curtail. It basically stops it at I think it's 17 watts, which that's a big difference. That's a very audible difference. So that could be it. In fact, I think it is. Because out of the box, that's the way it ships.
So he's got a lot of HDMI sources. More than the X3800H has HDMI ports. That is a lot. And a bunch of them are HDMI 2.0, DirecTV box, Apple TV, Roku, Blu-ray player, etc. So can we recommend a good HDMI switch? I just know Rob's got... I've
got one I like.
There's a lot of them out there these days that are good. And
they're fine.
I think I've been sending them to Andrew to review, those sorts of gadgets to Andrew to review because he does it really quickly and he's got a bunch of stuff to plug into it. Like I don't want to unplug anything because I'm lazy. So a lot of these things, what you're really worried about, what people are really worried about, is audio return channel. Like that's what they care about because they're using it and they need to make sure that it works or whatever. Or they're worried about HDMI 2.1, but you're not in this case. So
indeed,
quite a few of them on the market are going to work for you. Rob's got a favorite. He's going to tell you what it is.
Yeah, I always like to go to Sewell Direct. Sewell's switch decks. I've had very good experiences with those. I don't think it's going to be the absolute cheapest. If you just search for an HDMI 2.0 HDMI switch on Amazon, there probably are ones less expensive than the 5-in, 1-out Sewell switch deck, but that goes for $40. I don't think that's some kind of crazy outlandish price. Very rock solid. One thing I like about them is you'll find with a lot of other HDMI switches, the cheap ones, the HDMI ports are like arrayed all around. Like you'll have like one port on the left, one port on the right, 3 ports on the back, some weird thing like that. And it just becomes this weird spider hodgepodge of cables that's unwieldy wherever you put it. I like that the Sewell switch decks have all of the ports in a row on the back of the device. So they can all come out parallel to each other and you can keep your wires neater and tidier that way. But I find them rock solid. It is HDMI 2.0, so don't plug your PlayStation 5 and your Xbox Series X into this switch because you do have HDMI 2.1 switches on the Denon, so that's fine. Make sure your HDMI 2.1 sources go directly into the Denon, and then this can take up one more HDMI switch and give you 5 additional inputs, 5 for 1. So $40, Sewell switch deck.
Is that one of the ones that has the auto sensing though?
Well, I believe it does, but it also has a remote. It has a discrete remote so that you can individually select them, and then you can use a universal remote or a learning remote to do that instead.
So that's one of the things that you may end up being concerned about is the auto, like a device like a cable box in particular.
Like a cable box that's always on. Yep.
It's always on. So what might happen is you use your universal remote or your different remotes to turn on your TV, your receiver, and the device you want. And if the device you want is connected to that HDMI switch, and you switch your AV receiver to that input, if a cable box is always on, it may essentially make the switcher switch back to it because
possibly.
So what you end up having to do is, and this is just a trial and error thing because you won't know. A lot of times what you'll end up having to do is order them properly on the switch, or just take that device off the switch and plug it directly into your AV receiver where it won't be a problem. That could be too,
yeah. So, or you add one more command on the end of your activity or the end of your macro to make sure that after all that, it once again presses the correct HDMI switch, remote command to make sure it goes to the correct input.
That can be irritating and confusing. So yeah, I've run into that before with switches. So he's got a Mac Mini in another room with a 2-channel setup, but he'd also like to be able to send audio and video from that Mac Mini into the theater. Would it make sense to use a USB output into a DAC in the 2-channel room and then use a long HDMI cable to connect it to the AV receiver in the theater, or could he use an Ethernet connection? Is there a better method altogether? So you want to be able to send audio and video. So using an output to a USB DAC is not going to help you.
He wants audio and video to the theater. He's only worried about audio in the 2-channel room. Yeah.
Right. So he's saying, can I use a USB output into a DAC in the 2-channel room? Oh, I see. And I say, and then using a long HDMI cable.
It would require you to make a settings change in the Mac Mini.
Every time you want to switch from one.
Every time you want to switch, you'd have to switch my output as either USB for audio or it's HDMI for audio.
Yeah.
You'd have to do that switch in the Mac Mini itself.
Is what we're saying. You'd have to do one.
I wouldn't think so. Yeah, that would require you switching between them in the settings on your Mac Mini, but that's not the end of the world.
You could do like HDMI to an audio extractor. Is that right?
Well, you could do an HDMI splitter.
Yeah, HDMI splitter. Oh god, it would be complicated.
But it starts getting into a pain. Like if there's any 4K HDR or something like that, then no, I think honestly what you proposed is fine. I'm perfectly fine recommending long HDMI cables now because you can get the fiber optic ones that are absolutely fine, and they're thin and they're flexible and they're easy to route and they work over long distances without any problem. So I would absolutely go and get a fiber optic. In fact, you don't need it, but I'd go ahead and get the certified ultra high speed fiber optic cable because then if there is ever an upgrade, the cable's already done and you don't have to worry about it. So the AVRant one is the one I like to recommend from Amazon. Goes for about $90 for the 50-foot length, which is probably longer than you need, but there's no problem spooling up a fiber optic HDMI cable. So I will suggest that. It's certified, it's ultra high speed, AVRant for, right around $90. And that's what I would do to connect it to your theater.
Yeah, just remember you are going to have to go into the Mac Mini and change the settings every single time you want to go from HDMI to whatever's going USB. On the room.
Yeah.
How are we doing on time?
We got about
Aras. Aras has his DIY on-ceiling speakers made from KEF in-ceiling speakers he housed in cabinets that he made himself, mounted to his ceilings. A friend came over, and they blasted Blade Runner 2049. I always want to say 44. Things must have been shaking so much that one of those overhead speakers came loose, and it crashed to the floor very hard.
Yeah.
He repaired the DIY cabinet.
I'm so sorry.
I know. No, I'm sure. I'm glad nobody was under it. That's why you have to put them on the outside of your couches.
Yes. Yeah.
He repaired the DIY cabinet and couldn't see any obvious damage to the KEF in-ceiling speaker on its surface, but when we tested it out, it was rattling and buzzing very loudly, so obviously something was wrong. He contacted KEF, and they said since it was damaged from a fall, it wouldn't be covered under the warranty. That is a reasonable response. I'm sorry.
That one, I gotta say, is pretty fair. Yeah.
Their service centers could replace any damaged parts, but they warned it would probably be a case of replacement, not repair, and I completely agree. He does have a local audio repair shop that he's used before. They would, of course, charge a fee just to look at the speaker. He's looking at about $600 just to buy an entirely new KEF in-ceiling speaker to replace this damaged one. So do we think it's even worth attempting a repair? Nope. I don't.
This is one where, it's possible that the actual repair that needs to happen is not that extensive a thing. It's possible. It could be, there's a little tear in the surround and that's all it is. There's a little dent in the frame and that's all it is. Possible, but to diagnose all the things it could be, because the magnet might be out of alignment, the voice coil might be out of alignment.
That's there might be
there might be damage to the spider. There might be there's so many things that this could be that diagnosing it is not going to be trivial. You're going to end up in a case where replacing it is so much easier than trying to repair these things or check, because maybe you replace one thing and it turns out, some other thing actually had a tiny little dent that even the repair shop didn't notice, and now it's weakened or it just doesn't work right and you have to go back there. And it's for just the peace of mind, for the simplicity and the peace of mind, unfortunately, this is one where I would just bite the bullet and just buy the replacement. That's what I would do. This
is another in the long line of reasons why I don't like putting expensive speakers on my ceiling.
There's that.
I'm a little confused how this. I mean, you built your own cabinets. I'm surprised they weren't properly secured to the ceiling. I'm not judging you. I'm not saying that.
As far as I know, he went with metal L brackets, and I don't know, maybe it's those ones that only have the quite narrow tabs, and it literally just shook itself sideways.
Maybe you used drywall anchors, and the anchors didn't quite bite enough. I don't know.
Any number of things, yeah.
But I would definitely take a very close look at any other on-ceiling speakers you have.
Oh yes. I'm pretty sure he has.
I'm sure he is.
Sure, this has
that did not need to be said. He's going to put tape on the ground. Don't step here. Underneath each one of them. Kiran, Ascendo has been making news lately, mostly for the ridiculous 50-inch Infrasonic subwoofer, but Kiran was more interested in their demonstration of their multi-subwoofer setup, where they had mere 15-inch subwoofers playing down to 30 hertz, and then used their own proprietary software to blend those into one of their infrasonic subwoofers to handle 30 hertz down to 5 hertz, or as I like to call it, 10 hertz of actual sound and
something that a mic can show you.
Garbage. So whatever. Without going quite as nuts as their setup, would it be possible to create a similar configuration using a regular dead-end receiver and Odyssey software? So if you want to do something like this, what you need to Google and look up is first of all, the answer is no, but not that I'm aware of. With
not directly easily just in that software, but with a not terribly expensive edition of a mini DSP.
Mini DSP, you could do it.
Because all they've done is created a crossover. That's all they've done is created a crossover. It's not that complicated.
For a while, HSU used to sell a mid-bass woofer. So a mid-bass woofer was meant to be like directly behind your couch. It was supposed to go from like, I don't know, 100
50
down.
to 80, basically. It was about 50 to 80. Yeah.
So it was supposed to do like that, and then you had two other subwoofers someplace in there, and they would handle the 50 down to 20 or lower bass. And it was completely never caught on. It was, I think we had one listener our entire podcast career who had something like it, and he had a ridiculous number of subwoofers in his room, so he just liked having subwoofers. It's a waste of time.
It's also a bad idea. It's just a bad idea. The notion that you're going to have multiple subwoofers handling from the crossover of your bass management down to 30 hertz and then transition to one subwoofer for the lower frequencies, that's a bad idea. I hate that on every possible level.
So the mid-bass woofer is actually the opposite of that. It's the mid-bass handles the upper bass with one woofer, with one subwoofer, and then the lower stuff with two or more. This is the opposite of that, where multiple subwoofers handle the mid-bass and then what they call mid-bass.
No, I mean the
single one does that.
The Ascendo has created for themselves a completely unnecessary problem because
they've created for themselves an opportunity to sell more subwoofers is what they've done, and that is not a problem for them. That is a solution.
No, but I mean, they've created a technical problem by creating a ridiculous 50-inch subwoofer that can't play up to 80 hertz cleanly because it's just too big and floppy a driver to work at anything above 25 hertz properly. So they've created this horrible technical problem where just because of the ridiculous physical size, people can't have more than one of this 50-inch subwoofer. And if it could, it's only working from 25 hertz and lower. So then you're going to have, 4 of those handling that and then transition to 4 proper subwoofers. They've created a ridiculous situation then are trying to sell you a very expensive solution to the ridiculous problem that they've created, all of which is unnecessary. So on the technical side, can you have a multi-subwoofer system where you don't have 4 identical subwoofers all playing from 20 hertz to 80 hertz? Could you create a crossover in there? Could you have like a 2-way subwoofer system? Absolutely, you could. Technically, you can do that, not with the Odyssey software. That wouldn't be where you would do it, but you would just add a mini DSP. So you would have the subwoofer signal coming out of your AV receiver going into a mini DSP. The mini DSP would have a crossover in it where the lower frequencies get sent to one pair or quad of lower frequency subwoofers, and then the rest of the frequencies get sent to another pair or quad of higher frequency subwoofers. It's no different, in effect, as creating a 2-way speaker with a tweeter and a woofer. That's all we're doing. We're just doing it at a lower frequency. So you could absolutely do that quite easily and affordably with a mini DSP, but I hate this idea. I absolutely would not do it, and I would just get 2 or 4 darn good subwoofers that are appropriate for my room size and not worry about any of this nonsense.
Travis bought a used Denon X2200W receiver about a year ago. It was working fine in his 4.1 setup with his Martin Logan Motion series speakers and SVS PP12 NSD subwoofer. He sits about 7 feet away, but it's an open room. He recently did some power dusting, and now his X2200W is producing a high-pitched noise at all times. Kind of a buzzing sound, but it's high in pitch. It is constant regardless of source, plugging into different outlets in the house or any volume levels. He also has a Denon X2000, and it's perfectly fine. Basically no noise floor at all. So is this 2200W just dying? If he needs to replace it, he's only got about $300 to spend right now. He'd really like to keep Odyssey with dynamic EQ. He does have 4K 60 HDR sources he'd like to be able to switch. He's perfectly happy buying used, so are there any particular models he should look out for? Or even better, is there anything he can do with his X2200W to fix this high-pitched buzzing problem? Well, step one, since at this point you're in this mode of either I'm replacing or fixing, right? Mm-hmm. So you're no longer worried about warranty because this is too old for warranty anyways. No. So you are going to take the top off of it, and you are going to spray that with compressed air, vacuum it out. You're going to do whatever you want to do. You need to get in there and clean this thing up as best you can. Chances are, if your dusting broke it, better dusting will fix it, would be my guess. I have had issues.
I don't know what power dusting actually means. That's
I don't know what that means either.
I'm not sure what that actually entails.
I don't know what that means either. I will tell you, my AV receiver has had issues from time to time because there was a lot of dust given off during the construction in my house, and a lot of it landed in, or it was drawn inside the AV receiver. So I've had to go through a couple of times and dust it. I mean, I've gotten it won't, the front display stopped working, and then it would I don't remember, something else happened where it wasn't controlling volume, or there was all kind of weirdness, and I just took some compressed air, blew it through there, and it was fine, like that. So that would be the very first thing I would do. I would give it a good clean, because if nothing else, and remember, you don't want to have any static electricity if you live in a place where it's a high static electricity environment. You're going to be opening this thing up. You want to make sure that you're grounding yourself, or that you're taking every precaution that you can. You certainly don't want to fry anything by releasing a static charge into your AV receiver, but just taking the top off with a screwdriver and blowing it out or vacuuming it out may solve your problem. Full stop.
Yeah, to me, what he's describing sounds like, if it's anything, I would guess that it's a power supply problem at this point. So yeah, it's a little. I mean, if you went to a repair shop, it's going to be at least $150 just to look at the darn thing, and then replacing the power supply is probably going to be at least an $80 to $90 repair. And I'm like, oh, you're kind of at your budget anyway. So I don't know. So look, I'm not a great person to go for used equipment. I think he's more just like, are there any particular models you should look for? Like, I'm happy to look over at Accessories for Less. What do they have refurbished that they're selling there? They don't really have anything I could point you to for exactly $300. For $350, they do have Denon's X660H, which is actually a pretty darn new model, right? He's only doing a 4.1 setup, so I'm fine with recommending a 5.1 channel receiver that has like 3 HDMI 2.1 ports in it for switching. It's really very up to date, but that would only get you regular multi-Q. It wouldn't get you multi-Q XT. So to get XT at a somewhat affordable price, refurbished from Accessories for Less, that would be, they do have X1600Hs in stock. That's going back at least one model year, because there's a 1700H now, so you wouldn't be getting HDMI 2.1 switching in there, but it would get you multi-Q XT, and it is pretty darn up to date, and I don't have a big problem. That's $400 for a refurbished X1600H. So none of that fully meets the criteria you were talking about. Instead, what I would point you to is zkelectronics.com. Great resource for just plugging in any AV receiver model, going back to I think about the 2200W is about as old as they went. But you can plug in any AV receiver model that you might find in there, and they just give you a rundown of the specs really simply, the pluses and minuses, and you have a comparison tool there. So if this is a matter of you come across a model used on Craigslist or eBay or something like that, or AudioGone or wherever you're looking, and you're like, does this have all the features I want? If you just plug the model number into ZK Electronics, you can quickly see if it has all the features that you want. I think that's sort of the easier way for you to find, okay, here's what's available locally to me on my used market. Do any of these meet the criteria? So I think that's what I would do there. Steven's answer is going to definitely be too long for us. I don't know if you want to skip down to Keshaun's, which is quite quick, or call it a day.
I do want to say that was it ZK Electronics? When you click on their little link in our document that we use, it says compare AV receivers, TVs, espresso machines. Period. Full stop. I'm like, where do the espresso machines come from?
I know them for TVs and AV receivers. I didn't know espresso machines. It's funny that
espresso machines apparently are. That needs a comparison chart. That's fine. We can do Keshaun real quick. Keshaun's projected image vibrates like crazy when his 4 monolith 10-inch subs. And his two 15-inch monolith subs at the back. So he's got 10-inch up front and 15 inches at the back.
4 of them at the front, 2 15 inches at the back.
Oh, geez. I didn't see that. Okay, yeah. He was already using the peerless vibration dampening ceiling mount with a Sony VW325ES projector, but his image would still shake a lot. So he got excited when he heard about Eric's success using Chief's CMA 347 projector vibration isolator, and even more excited when he was also able to find one on sale on eBay for under $100. But they got a little concerned about the stated weight limit. The CMA 347 says it's rated for up to a 35-pound load. His VW325 weighs 31. Well, then you're fine. But then it still has the adjustable part of the ceiling mount on top of it that the vibration isolator would be holding. So he figured that put him right at the edge of the 35 pounds. So you looked into it a bit and found the larger Chief CMA 3848 vibration isolator, and it's rated 35 to 100 pounds with an option to adjust the spring tension to either 35 to 50 or over 50. By pounds. By default, the manual says it's set for the lower range. They normally sell for over $500, but once again, the eBay came through. He found one for $135, so he snapped it up. And we've got some pictures. Yeah, it's big. But now the bad news. It didn't help at all. His image still shakes like crazy, so that's very disappointing. However, he wonders if this larger version actually needs the projector to be heavier in order for it to be effective. Do we think weighing it down a bit so that it's definitely only for 35 pounds will help? Yes, I think you should do pull-ups on it.
That might be over 100 pounds.
Yes. I don't know. Keshaun could be a very slight.
Could be teeny
person. Tiny. Yeah, I actually was thinking that you were making a mistake by not using the other one, to be honest with you. I think the smaller one might have been more effective for exactly the reason that you have guessed.
Stiffer springs.
The stiffer springs in the larger one may, in fact, not be damping. They may just be moving along with everything else. So that would be my guess. I'm also a little concerned about your thought that the adjustable part of the ceiling mount adds to the weight. I think that the 31 pounds is pretty much it, but maybe I'm not understanding exactly what you're looking at.
No, because I mean, on the ceiling mount, you've got the part that actually attaches to the ceiling, and then you've got the part that attaches to the projector. Yeah. So the part that attaches to the projector is still there. So it's adding some little amount of weight to that 31 pounds of the projector. Yeah. I don't think it would put you over the 35 pounds. Because also Chief is being pretty darn conservative with that. So they're basically like, look, if you've got a 50-pound projector, don't use the 347. Use the 348. If you got a 30-pound projector or a 31-pound projector, the 347 is almost certainly fine, even if you have a little additional weight because of the top plate that is part of the ceiling mount. So I think you would have been absolutely fine with the 347. I'm also a little concerned because you did get this on eBay. So even though it might have appeared new, it's not necessarily set to the 35 to 50-pound range. It might have been set to the 50 to 100-pound range.
I would double-check that first thing.
Definitely double check, because that's a pretty simple and easy one to double check. But more than all of that, I'm wondering, is the projector the thing that's shaking? Because he has a retractable ceiling mounted screen. Right. And I'm like, is the image shaking because the screen is shaking, not the projector? Because that seems entirely plausible.
Well, you're moving a lot of air. I don't know if anybody has told you this, but you have entirely too many subwoofers. You're moving a ridiculous amount of air when those subwoofers are hitting. You are probably moving
and the whole structure of the room.
Pant shaking amounts, pant leg shaking amount of air. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if you could feel it on your leg hair if you have such a thing. So, yes. What is shaking? Is it the structure of the room? Is it the projector and the projector mount? Is it the screen? Is it just the air in the room which is moving the screen? I don't know. If it were me, I would hit that. I would have that sub hit. The subs go and do their thing where they start shaking things, and then stand to the side of the screen, like look at it dead on, and try to see if the screen seems to be moving. And maybe because that might be it.
Reason I comment that is because my inclination is that, yes, even though this model of vibration isolator is rated for way more weight than you need, your projector isn't so light in weight that I would expect it to be completely ineffective unless the springs are set to the 50 to 100 pound range. So definitely double check that. But if it's set to the 35 to 50 pound range properly, as far as the spring tensioning goes, I wouldn't expect this to not work. I would expect it to work. Maybe not completely optimally, and maybe it is as simple as adding a 5 pound weight somewhere to the projector to get it properly over 35 pounds, and maybe that is all that needs to be done. But I kind of suspect that the screen is physically shaking even more than the projector, and obviously you would be able to see that if that were going on. So that's my take on that one. Hopefully not too pedantic, but I think
there's
that
a lot
might
of
be
stuff in
what's
that room
going on.
can be shaking when you've got 4 subs up front and 2 in the back.
Maybe it's him.
Maybe it's the jelly in your eyeballs.
Or maybe it's the seats.
Maybe it's the chairs. He didn't tell us about the 15 bass shakers he's got underneath his single seat.
Turns out the projector and the screen have been fine this entire time. It's the viewer that's been shaking.
It's the viewer that's shaking. He's like, oh, I also sit in a massaging chair, which I have set on maximum the entire time. All right. That's the end of that. We'll be answering who?
Steven next week.
Okay. I want to thank our listeners of the week. I want to thank our 133 patrons over at patreon.com, as well as Keshaun for sending a code for Edge of Tomorrow for me to use, which I will do something with. Maybe give it to somebody on the podcast who asked for it. Who knows?
That sounds like a reasonable idea. So yes, big thanks to our 133 patrons over at patreon.com/AVRant podcast. That's the place to go to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation, if you please. And thank you, Keshaun, for sending the Movies Anywhere code.
I also want to thank those who sent us notes of gratitude, including Nick, Billy, Mike, Gurinder, Aras, Travis, and Steven.
Yes, indeed. I'll say the names one more time. Nick, Billy, Mike, Gurinder, Aras, Travis, and Steven. Thank you all very much for sending in those notes of gratitude to us for keeping the podcast going. We appreciate the notes of encouragement, and a big, big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
That's right. If you want to get your question answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. For AVRant, I'm Tom Antry.
And I'm Rob H. Now stay in and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.